I'm Brianna, 23 years old. For 23 years, I lived as a servant in my own home. I woke at 5 every morning to scrub floors, cook meals, and wash clothes, while my brother Brandon slept until noon in his king-sized bed. My parents told me something I believed for over 2 decades. Some children are born to be served. Some are born to serve. You're the second kind. I never questioned it. Not until the bride's father, a man I'd never met, looked at my face during the family photo and started trembling. He pulled me aside and asked a question that shattered everything I thought I knew. Do you know who your real mother is? Before I continue, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear what happened next. And if you're watching, drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to the morning of Brandon's wedding. The day I thought would be the worst of my life. We lived in a 2-story colonial in Fairfield County, Connecticut, the kind of neighborhood where every lawn was manicured and every family drove European cars. Our neighbors were surgeons, attorneys, partners at hedge funds. From the outside, the Patterson household looked like the American dream. From the inside, it was my nightmare. My bedroom wasn't a bedroom. It was the basement, a concrete floor, no windows, a thin mattress that smelled like mildew. The furnace hummed 3 feet from my head. In winter, it was the only warmth I had. In summer, it was suffocating. Every morning at 5, my alarm would ring. By 5:15, I'd be upstairs in the kitchen, scrubbing the granite countertops, preheating the Viking stove, pulling eggs and bacon from the sub-zero refrigerator. The kitchen island was Italian marble, calicotta, Donna once bragged to her book club. I knew every vein in that stone because I polished it daily. Gerald would come down around 7, his Wall Street Journal tucked under his arm, his Tag Heuer glinting on his wrist. He'd settle into his leather armchair in the breakfast nook, never once looking at me. Is it done? He'd ask without lifting his eyes from the headlines. Yes, Mr. Patterson. The coffee's weak today. Make it stronger tomorrow. That was the extent of our conversations. 23 years of monosyllables and commands. I'd set his plate on the table, the good china, the Wedgwood with the silver rim, and retreat to the kitchen. My place was never at that table. My place was beside the sink, eating whatever scraps were left after the family finished. But the thing that hurt most wasn't the cold basement or the endless chores. It was the way they referred to me. Brandon's room was on the 2nd floor, corner unit, with bay windows overlooking the garden. He had a 65-inch Samsung mounted on the wall, a PlayStation 5, and a walk-in closet bigger than my entire basement. He went to St. Thomas Academy, $45,000 a year, lacrosse team, college prep. I stayed home. Homeschooled, Gerald told the neighbors whenever they asked. The truth was simpler. No one taught me anything. I learned to read from old magazines Donna threw away. I learned math by counting change at the grocery store. When Brandon turned 18, Gerald handed him the keys to a white BMW 3 Series. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have a single form of identification. Your documents got lost in a fire, Donna told me once when I was 12 and asked why I couldn't enroll in the local middle school. It's too complicated to replace them. You're better off here with us. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. Brandon had an American Express Platinum card linked to Gerald's account. No limit. He bought sneakers that cost more than I'd touched in my entire life. I owned 3 dresses, all hand-me-downs from Donna, altered to fit my smaller frame. At dinner, the family sat together. Brandon would talk about his classes, his friends, his weekend plans. Gerald would nod approvingly. Donna would smile and refill his glass. I stood in the kitchen doorway, waiting to clear the plates. Once, when I was 14, I asked Donna why I couldn't sit with them. She laughed like I'd told a joke. Brianna, honey, the table only seats 3. It seated 6. I'd counted. That night, I realized something I'd never admitted to myself. I wasn't part of this family. I never had been. Gerald called them the family rules. He'd written them on an index card when I was 5 and taped it to the inside of my basement door, the only decoration I was allowed. Rule 1. You do not sit at the family table. Rule 2. You do not call us Mom or Dad. You will address us as Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Patterson. Rule 3. You do not leave the house without permission. Rule 4. You do not speak to strangers. Rule 2. You do not call us Mom or Dad. You will address us as Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Patterson. Rule 3. You do not leave the house without permission. Rule 4. You do not speak to strangers. The consequences for breaking these rules lived in the kitchen pantry, a thin rattan cane, the kind you'd use on furniture, hidden behind the cereal boxes. Gerald only had to use it twice before I understood. The first time, I was 7. I'd called Donna Mommy in front of her sister. The welts on my palms lasted 2 weeks. The second time, I was 16. I'd saved grocery change for months, $17.32, and walked to the bus station 3 miles away. I was going to leave. I was going to find someone who could help me. The police brought me back within 2 hours. She doesn't have any ID, they told Gerald at the door. No identification whatsoever. Is she yours? Gerald smiled, the warm, concerned smile of a loving father. She's our daughter. Troubled girl, mental health issues. Thank you so much for bringing her home, officers. They left. Gerald locked the door. I spent 3 days in the basement without food. When he finally let me out, he leaned close and whispered, "Without papers, you don't exist. And if you don't exist, no one will ever believe you. No one will ever help you. Do you understand?" I understood. For 7 more years, I never tried to leave again. Brandon wasn't cruel the way Gerald was cruel. He didn't hit me. He didn't lock me in basements or starve me for days. He simply didn't see me. To Brandon, I was furniture. Functional, forgettable, there when needed. "Brianna, coffee. Brianna, my room's messy. Brianna, I need the car washed before my date." When his friends came over, he'd introduce me with a wave of his hand. "That's our housekeeper." Not sister, not family. Housekeeper. No one ever questioned it. I looked nothing like the Pattersons. They all had brown eyes and sandy hair. My eyes were green, almost emerald in certain light, and my hair was dark chestnut. I'd asked about it once, years ago. Donna slapped me and told me to stop asking stupid questions. At 26, Brandon was handsome, confident, and employed at one of the biggest real estate firms in Connecticut. He hadn't earned the job. His fiancée's father had arranged it. Victoria Whitmore, blonde, poised, daughter of Richard Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Properties, worth $47 million. Brandon had proposed to her 3 months ago at Per Se in Manhattan with a 2-carat diamond ring he'd charged to Gerald's card. The Pattersons were ecstatic. This marriage wasn't just love, it was a ladder. I overheard Gerald talking to Donna the night of the engagement. "This is it. This is how we get into their circle. Richard Whitmore could change everything for us." They didn't know that Richard Whitmore would change everything, all right. Just not the way they expected. The woman Brandon was marrying would become instrumental in destroying the life the Pattersons had built. Not because of her, because of her father. I was 15 when I finally asked the question I'd been holding inside for years. Donna was in the living room, flipping through a Pottery Barn catalog, marking pages with Post-its. I'd just finished mopping the floors, and my hands were raw from the bleach. "Mrs. Patterson?" She didn't look up. "What?" "Why am I different from Brandon?" The catalog lowered. Her eyes, cold, flat, the color of dishwater, met mine. "Different how? Why does he get to go to school? Why does he sit at the table? Why do I have to—" "Because." She cut me off, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Some children are born to be loved. Some children are born to help others. You're the second kind, Brianna. That's your purpose. That's your fate." She returned to her catalog. The conversation was over. I went back to the basement that night and stared at my reflection in the small, cracked mirror above the utility sink, the only mirror I was allowed. My eyes were nothing like theirs. My face was nothing like theirs. But I didn't question it anymore. Donna was right, I told myself. Some people are born to serve. I was one of them. Fighting it would only bring more pain. For 8 more years, I believed that. I woke at 5, I scrubbed and cooked and cleaned, and I told myself this was my life. This was what I deserved. Then came Brandon's wedding. and the man who looked at my face and saw someone else entirely. I didn't know it yet, but in 24 hours, every lie I'd been told would begin to unravel. The wedding announcement came 6 months before the ceremony. Brandon and Victoria would marry at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains, 200 guests, a live orchestra, a 5-tier cake from a bakery in Manhattan. Total cost, $200,000, generously covered by Richard Whitmore. Gerald practically floated through the house for weeks. "This is the biggest day of our lives," he kept saying. "The Whitmores are old money, Connecticut aristocracy. We need to make an impression." Donna threw herself into planning. She coordinated with Victoria's mother on flowers, catering, the rehearsal dinner. She bought a new dress, Oscar de la Renta, champagne-colored $4,000. I assumed I'd be a bridesmaid. I'd spent 6 months helping prepare, addressing invitations, organizing RSVPs, picking up dry cleaning. I'd even practiced walking in heels, imagining myself in a lavender gown, standing beside the altar. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Donna sat me down in the kitchen. "We need to discuss your role," she said. My heart lifted. "Am I walking with the bridesmaids?" She laughed, not kindly. "No, Brianna. You'll be helping with service, passing out champagne, making sure guests have what they need." The words hit me like ice water. "You want me to work the wedding?" "It's not working, it's helping." Her smile was thin and practiced. "You know how you are, sweetheart, clumsy, awkward. If you stood up there in front of the Whitmores, they'd wonder what's wrong with you. Is that what you want? To embarrass Brandon on his special day?" I shook my head slowly, the familiar numbness settling in. Later that night, the wedding invitations arrived from the printer. Embossed gold lettering, 600-gram cotton paper. I searched through every card. My name wasn't on the family list. It wasn't anywhere at all. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Greenwich Country Club. White tablecloths, crystal stemware, champagne that cost more per bottle than I'd seen in a year. The Whitmores had reserved the entire terrace overlooking the golf course. I wore black. Simple dress, white apron. Donna had selected the outfit herself. "You look professional," she'd said, adjusting my collar. "Remember, smile, don't speak unless spoken to, and stay invisible." I carried a silver tray of champagne flutes through the crowd. Whitmore cousins, business associates, old money families whose names I recognized from the society pages Donna left lying around. No one looked at me. I was part of the scenery, until Victoria noticed. She approached me near the bar, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, her engagement ring catching the sunset light. "You're Brandon's sister, right? Brianna?" I nearly dropped my tray. "Yes, ma'am." "Why aren't you sitting with the family?" Before I could answer, Donna materialized at my elbow, her laugh high and bright. "Brianna prefers to help out. She's shy, always has been. Happier in the background." She patted my arm with the affection of a woman posing for cameras. Victoria's brow creased, but she nodded politely and drifted back to her fiancé. I resumed my rounds. That's when I noticed him, Richard Whitmore, Victoria's father, standing near the railing with a glass of scotch, watching me. Not glancing, watching. His face had gone pale, his jaw tight. He approached slowly. "Excuse me, what's your name?" "Brianna, sir." "Brianna." He said it like he was testing the sound. Do you happen to know who your birth mother is?" The question made no sense. "I'm sorry?" He stared at me for a long moment, then excused himself abruptly and walked toward the parking lot, phone already pressed to his ear. Donna watched him go, her smile frozen, her knuckles white around her champagne glass. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my basement. Upstairs I could hear laughter, Donna toasting with her sisters, Brandon's college friends clinking bottles in the living room. The house thrummed with celebration. Down here, there was only the hum of the furnace and the drip of a leaky pipe. I held the black uniform I'd wear tomorrow, pressing out the wrinkles with my hands, since I wasn't allowed to use the iron after 9 p.m. Beside me lay the white apron, starched and spotless. On my lap was a photograph, the only one I had of myself with the family. I was 5 in the picture, standing at the edge of the frame while Gerald, Donna, and toddler Brandon posed together by the Christmas tree. They were touching. I was alone. In 23 years of living in this house, I didn't have a single photo where I stood beside my parents. Not one. Why? The question had whispered to me my whole life, but I'd always pushed it down. Asking led to pain. Curiosity led to punishment. But tonight, in the darkness, the question wouldn't stay buried. Why didn't I look like them? Why did they treat me like a stranger? Why had they kept me hidden for so long? I thought about Richard Whitmore's face at the rehearsal dinner, the way he'd gone pale, the tremor in his voice when he asked about my mother. He'd looked at me like he knew me, like he'd been looking for me. But that was ridiculous. No one had ever looked for me. No one had ever wanted me. Tomorrow, I would serve champagne at my brother's wedding, while my family pretended I didn't exist. Then life would go on, exactly as it always had. At least, that's what I believed. I had no idea what was coming. I woke at 4 a.m. on the morning of Brandon's wedding. The house was silent. I crept upstairs and started breakfast: eggs Benedict, fresh squeezed orange juice, the spread Gerald expected before any major event. By 6, I had the dining room set with the good china. Then I moved to the guest room where Victoria's wedding dress hung in its garment bag. Vera Wang, $12,000, hand-beaded bodice with a cathedral train. Donna had insisted on storing it at our house, claiming our closets had better humidity control than the Whitmore estate. The real reason, I suspected, was so she could show it to her friends. I steamed the fabric carefully, terrified of leaving a single crease. My hands trembled. If I damaged this dress, I didn't want to imagine what Gerald would do. Footsteps behind me. Donna appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a La Perla silk robe, her hair in rollers. "Don't touch the beading," she said. "That's imported crystal, worth more than you." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." She watched me work, arms crossed. "When we arrive at the hotel, you'll enter through the service entrance. Don't let anyone see you going in." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." "And don't embarrass us." Her voice dropped, sharp and cold. "This is the most important day of Brandon's life. If you do anything to ruin it, I will make you regret it." Gerald's voice boomed from downstairs. "Brianna, where's my coffee?" Donna smirked and left. I stood there, holding the steamer, staring at the wedding dress I wasn't allowed to touch and the life I wasn't allowed to live. Something shifted inside me, small but irreversible. This would be the last time. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I was done. Enough. The Ritz-Carlton Grand Ballroom looked like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers dripped from 30-foot ceilings. White roses cascaded from every surface: the altar, the centerpieces, the sweeping archways. 200 gilded chairs faced a platform where Brandon would soon stand and promise forever to a woman whose family fortune could buy our entire neighborhood. I entered through the loading dock. The catering manager handed me a silver tray and pointed toward the ballroom. "Champagne service. Keep moving, keep smiling, don't engage in conversation." I nodded and took my position. Guests streamed in, women in designer gowns, men in bespoke suits, diamonds glittering under the chandeliers. I wove between them, offering flutes of Veuve Clicquot, my eyes fixed on the floor. A woman in Chanel stopped me. "Excuse me, are you with the hotel?" "Yes, ma'am." The lie came easily. Gerald passed by without a glance. Donna paused just long enough to whisper, "Your posture is terrible. Stand up straight." Then Brandon appeared with his groomsmen, laughing, adjusting his Tom Ford cufflinks. He saw me and waved me over. "Brianna, hey, make sure there's extra shrimp at my table. You know how Dad gets." "Of course." He turned back to his friends. One of them, a former lacrosse teammate, squinted at me. "Who's that?" "Housekeeper," Brandon said. "She's worked for us forever." The word sliced through me. Housekeeper, not sister, not family. But I didn't react. I'd learned long ago that reactions led to punishment. I returned to circulating, offering champagne to people who looked through me like glass. Then I felt it. Someone watching. I turned. Across the ballroom, Richard Whitmore stood alone, his champagne untouched, his eyes locked on my face. He wasn't just watching this time. He was studying me. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock. A string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as Victoria floated down the aisle in her Vera Wang gown, the train trailing 15 feet behind her. Brandon waited at the altar, beaming, his hands clasped in front of him. Gerald and Donna sat in the front row, dabbing their eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. I stood at the back of the ballroom, tray in hand, watching my family from 50 feet away. The officiant spoke about love, commitment, the sacred bond of marriage. Brandon's voice cracked when he said his vows. Victoria's eyes glistened as she slipped the Tiffany band onto his finger. They kissed. The room erupted in applause, and I stood there, invisible, holding champagne I wasn't allowed to drink. For a moment, I let myself imagine a different life, one where I sat in that front row beside Donna, one where I wore a lavender dress and held a bouquet of roses, one where Brandon introduced me to his bride as my sister Brianna instead of our housekeeper. But that life didn't exist. Maybe it never had. The crowd rose for the recessional. Brandon and Victoria swept down the aisle arm in arm, showered with rose petals. As they passed, Donna caught my eye. Her expression wasn't warm, it wasn't proud, it was a warning, don't forget your place. I lowered my gaze. Somewhere in the crowd I felt that watching presence again. Richard Whitmore, standing near the back, hadn't clapped once. He hadn't taken his eyes off me for the entire ceremony. I didn't understand why. But a strange feeling crept through my chest, something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. And I didn't know what to do with it. If you've made it this far, I think you understand why I'm telling this story. You might know what it feels like to stand inside your own family and still be treated like an outsider. To serve people who refuse to acknowledge you exist. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to serve someone who wouldn't even admit you were part of their family? If you have, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment. Let me know I'm not alone. And if this story is hitting close to home, please like and subscribe. Because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about myself. I'll be right back. The reception began with champagne toasts and a 12-piece jazz band. I worked the Whitmore family table, refilling water glasses, clearing appetizer plates. Victoria's mother smiled politely at me. Her aunts and uncles chatted amongst themselves about summer homes in the Hamptons. Richard Whitmore sat at the head of the table, barely touching his food. Every time I approached, I felt his gaze. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, not predatory or cold. It was something else. Something I couldn't name. When I reached to clear his salad plate, his hand shot out and caught my wrist. Gently, but firmly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "I need to ask you something." "Of course, sir." "Your name is Brianna?" "Yes." "Brianna Patterson?" "Yes, sir." He released my wrist. His hand was trembling. "Do you know who your mother is? Your real mother?" The question again. The same one from the rehearsal dinner. "I live with Mr. and Mrs. Patterson," I said carefully. "They've raised me since I was a baby." Richard's face changed. Something broke behind his eyes. Grief, or maybe recognition. "Excuse me," he whispered, and stood abruptly from the table. I watched him walk toward the terrace doors, pulling out his phone. Through the glass, I could see him pacing, speaking intensely to someone on the other end. Victoria noticed. "Is my dad okay?" I didn't know how to answer. At the family table, Donna was watching the scene unfold. Her champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. She leaned toward Gerald and whispered something. He turned, found me with his eyes, and his expression hardened into something I recognized. Fear. I'd never seen Gerald Patterson afraid of anything. Until now. The photographer clapped his hands and called for the family portraits. "Bride and groom's families, please gather by the floral arch." The Whitmores assembled first. Richard, his wife Eleanor, Victoria's brother and his wife, a cluster of elegant relatives in coordinated pastels. Then the Pattersons. Gerald straightened his tie. Donna smoothed her Oscar de la Renta. Brandon wrapped an arm around Victoria's waist. I stayed back, tray in hand. The photographer scanned the group, then pointed at me. "What about her? Is she family?" Silence. Gerald's smile tightened. Donna looked at the floor. Brandon said nothing. Then Richard Whitmore's voice cut through the awkward pause. "Yes, she's family. Brianna, please come stand beside me." I froze. "Sir? You heard me?" His voice was calm but firm. "Come here." I set down my tray. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I walked toward the group. Gerald's face flushed red. He couldn't object, not to Richard Whitmore, not the man paying for this entire wedding. But I could see his jaw working, the fury barely contained. Richard placed his hand on my shoulder. His palm was warm, steadying. "Right here," he said softly. "This is where you belong." The photographer adjusted his lens. "Everyone ready? Big smiles." The flash fired. Richard kept me close as the photographer showed him the preview on the camera's screen. I watched his face as he zoomed in on the image, specifically on me. His eyes went wet. "Those eyes," he murmured, almost to himself. "That chin, my God." He pulled out his phone again and walked away, dialing. I heard only fragments. "It's her. I'm certain. Get the file, the FBI cold case from 2003, and prepare a DNA kit, tonight." My heart stopped. What had he just said? The moment the photographer moved on, Gerald's hand clamped around my arm. "Outside, now." He pulled me through a service corridor, past the kitchen, into a narrow hallway where crates of champagne were stacked against the wall. The noise of the reception faded to a distant hum. "What did you tell him?" Gerald's face was inches from mine, his breath hot with whiskey. "Nothing.